Welcome to the show. It is Wednesday. Hope you're having a great day. Only 4 days to go until the season kicks off when the Fighting Irish head down to South Florida to take on the Miami Hurricanes. We are all chomping at the bit to get it going. Jesse's first day on the show this week. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. Halfway through the week, getting ready to go play some volleyball after this, so that'll be fun. But this week has been not as stressful as other weeks. So
well, that's good. That's
going
good.
Into Labor Day weekend.
Quick trip to St. Louis earlier this week. You made it back, I see. So that's good.
Yeah, I was about 2 hours south of St. Louis. It's called like Cape Girardeau.
Cape Girardeau.
Yeah, Scott City kind of area, Missouri. So was down there for a little bit, but yeah, I was in and out. I was not hovering around St. Louis longer than I needed to be.
Well, that's good. That's very good. Was it hot and muggy down there, or was it cool like it is up in this part of the Midwest?
No, it was actually really cool, and that was my biggest worry because every time I'm in St. Louis, it always feels super hot and super muggy. So I was glad I avoided that because I was on my feet walking around a site for 6 hours.
It is Mailbag Day on the show, and that means we have plenty of questions and answers with questions submitted by Fighting Irish football fans, both on the Irish Breakdown Champions Lounge. And if you're not a subscriber, just go to Irish Breakdown and head over and become a premium subscriber and get all the inside juicy news. And, of course, you can also, if you're watching on the YouTube stream at either the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel, you can submit your mailbag questions. And we have tons of questions ready to go today. Are you ready to answer some Notre Dame football questions?
I'm going to try my best to give some good answers.
All right. Let's see how it goes. I'm curious to see what you say about this first one. I got to get things loaded up here and plucked right in. Here we go, so that you can see it from Sean Kelly 15. The Miami insider, that would be David Lake, who we had on the show earlier this week, said he felt the Miami cornerbacks will probably play a lot of man coverage outside. He says, I feel like that's a huge advantage to Notre Dame. Am I wrong for thinking that? What do you think about that?
I think that means Miami is going to put their resources into a heavier box and try to stop the run game and play man on the backside and make, CJ Carr, a young, inexperienced, first-time starting quarterback, beat them. So this makes sense. And if Notre Dame wants to truly open up all aspects of their game, they're going to have to burn Miami in that man coverage and make them get out of it and kind of pass it back and forth between running the ball and passing the ball.
Yeah, I feel like there are a couple of different ways you could look at this. One, you play zone. I think maybe you could confuse a young first-time starter like CJ Carr. Two, you play man. You feel like you can obviously lock down Notre Dame's receivers. And, if you look at how Notre Dame has operated the last few years, I think that makes sense. Has Notre Dame been able to get off man coverage consistently? Have the Notre Dame receivers been able to do that? Well, the receiving core looks a little different this year because you do have a big boundary receiver like Malachi Fields, who is very experienced, and Miami's secondary has some length to them. They've got like a lot of 6'1", 6'2" type guys back there in the secondary. So make CJ Carr show that he can put the ball where it needs to be consistently, because they've been listening just like everybody else coming out of training camp that some interceptions were some issues for CJ Carr, and make Notre Dame's receivers show that they can win 50-50 battles. So I feel like it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, I also, like from the Miami perspective, but I also feel like CJ Carr and this wide receiver core of Notre Dame's can show that they can beat that as well if he plays to what we think that he can play.
Yeah, and I mean, that's going to be an important aspect of this season. CJ Carr, Jaden Greathouse, Malachi Fields, Jordan Faison, Will Pauling, they need to take a step at the next step as a overall passing attack if Notre Dame wants to accomplish the main goal, and that's a national championship.
The Shark 83 in the YouTube chat says he jumped into a Canes podcast that was entertaining. No, I'm curious if that means entertaining, like truly entertaining, or entertaining in an ironic kind of way, like entertaining because virtually everyone down there is picking this landslide win in Miami's favor. So I'm curious what he actually meant by that. Maybe he'll chime in and let us know. Joe Allen, other than the quarterback, what group do you think has the most opportunities in the game against Miami?
I mean, to be honest with you, I want to say the wide receiver group, especially if their intent is to come out and play a lot of man coverage. Whether that means they're bringing man coverage behind a lot of blitz packages, that's to be seen. But I think, again, everyone knows what Notre Dame can do in the running back room. Everyone knows kind of where their defense stands. I think the big question mark across the whole team is the wide receiver. So I think that they're going to get plenty of opportunities knowing kind of what Miami's game plan is going to be, and that's to stop the run first.
I think that offensively, wide receiver is it. I mean, like we know that Notre Dame's running backs, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, are going to see the ball a lot. But in terms of like playmaking type stuff, again, the question is outside the quarterback, Notre Dame's wide receivers definitely. Now, other side of the ball, I think it is going to be Notre Dame's secondary and maybe even the linebacker. Like this is tough for me because Miami knows that they're going to see a really good secondary across the line from them, against their receivers. I think that is a matchup that is in Notre Dame's favor Sunday night, and big time in Notre Dame's favor Sunday night. But Miami feels like they've got this big physical offensive line, and they're going to be able to pound the rock. What's Notre Dame's defensive line going to say about that? What's their linebackers going to say about that as well? Because I think that is a big, like, where there might be some question marks, and we'll touch on those specifically here with another question. There might be some question marks with Notre Dame's defensive line. The linebackers are not a question mark. That is, like, after the secondary, truth strength of Notre Dame's defense. So I feel like Notre Dame's linebackers are going to have some big-time opportunities to show what they can do, because I'm just not sure, like Miami has these bigger backs. I'm not sure how that's going to play against Notre Dame in terms of the speed of Notre Dame's linebackers and Notre Dame's secondary to be able to keep them from picking up big chunks on the ground. Jesse shakes his head in agreement. Let's go back to the Champions Lounge from Domer Grizz. Other than quarterback play, piggybacking on that a little bit, what are you most watching for Sunday? He says, for me, it's the improvement in the defensive line from last year. And I think that for me, I asked Marcus Freeman about the defensive tackles and his confidence, like what, not necessarily his confidence, but what he has seen from those defensive tackles, because it's going to look so different. No Howard Cross, no Riley Mills. We played this in rapid fire yesterday, but I'll go ahead and play this comment from Marcus Freeman here and see what you think, Jess.
The tackle position was probably the biggest question mark I had coming into training camp, and has probably given me the most conviction of a position group as any on our team. And, credit Coach Washington first for keeping that group together, driven, but, there's multiple guys. You hear about as Riley Mills and Howard Cross, and there's multiple guys in that room that are going to play and have played in practice as well as any position group in fall camp. And they're all different ages. There's transfers. There's a guy like Jason Onye that I've spoke about previously that it's a great reminder of development. He's playing as well at that position as anybody I've seen since I've been here. I mean, that's a high compliment for him, but that's a credit to the work he's put in. Donnie Heinisch, right? And I told him wearing number 41, he's got big shoes to fill because of his brother. And I came in when his brother was here. And I had 1 year with Kurt. Don't tell Kurt I said this, but Donnie's making me forget about the older 41, which is what Kurt would want, right? Kurt would want that. And Donnie's practicing as well as anybody. Gabe Rubio, Jared Dawson. I was a transfer coming into a new place, learning a new scheme, new expectations. His first practice to where he's at now, it's been tremendous. It's been tremendous in terms of being able to handle the way we practice, the expectations, what we want out of him. And so I speak with a lot of confidence when I talk about that defensive tackle group. I think we're going to see some big things out of them.
Okay, so the answer to my question is that. The question was, what are you most watching for other than quarterback? Mine is these defensive tackles and how they stack up against, like, these first two opponents, Miami and Texas A&M, should be the biggest challenges they have from a pure physicality standpoint at the point of contact. So that's what I'm watching. I'm curious what you think. That was a long answer for Marcus Freeman, very effusive in his praise. And like Vince and I were saying yesterday, he very easily, if he didn't have true confidence in them, he could have given a word salad and finished that in about 15 seconds, whatever response that he had. But he was very specific with those different guys and what he thinks of them. What do you think of that, Jess?
Yeah, I think that his confidence should give the rest of us confidence. And most importantly, to kind of go back to the question at hand, I do think that basically offensive and defensive line are the things that I'm looking at outside of the quarterback play. I think you have a young offensive line and a lot of pieces that really haven't played together. I know a lot of the individual pieces are talented and good at their job, but it's a matter of how that line comes together as a unit, a 5-man unit, and if they're going to be better in pass protection this year. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking for in the offensive line. They'll be able to be physical and run the ball and do what they need to. But I'm looking at, Anthony Knapp in pass protection, Emil Wagner in pass protection, Billy Stroud, what that communication looks like, because it has to be flawless if Notre Dame really wants to open up the pass game this year. And they don't have the luxury of Riley Leonard back there anymore to bail them out of, pockets that are collapsing. So yeah. I think that's the number one thing on the offensive side of the ball. And the defensive side of the ball, again, a group that really hasn't played a whole lot together. Injuries last year took out the ends. Anye was out a lot last season. Rubio was out. So really the main returning person is Heinisch and some of these backups that are obviously going to get in the game too. But in terms of starters, this is a whole new defensive line. So how does this line come together? Are there other edge guys going to be able to, create pressure, but also hold up on lane integrity? Can the inside techniques eat double teams and be efficient in stuffing the run game, especially if Miami has some powerful backs? So, that was what Notre Dame was really good at last season, is controlling the trenches, leaning on guys, and pushing and establishing the line of scrimmage. They need to do that early this season against Miami and Texas A&M because of how front-loaded this schedule is.
I agree with all of that. A lot of good stuff to look at there. I'm trying to get some questions started up. Salty Virginia Peanuts wants to know if you're a very good volleyball player.
So I play sand volleyball, so I think it's more forgiving, right? I like to kind of make some of the cool plays because it is sand, so I like to dive a lot and that sort of stuff. I would say consistently I'm a top 1 or 2 players on our team every week.
Oh, superstar.
Top 1 or 2. Some days, most weeks I'm 1, some days I'm 2. When we're really working well, I'm setting to our really tall guy. He's like 6'3", 6'4". So that's really the only downside of my game, is I have no ability to go up and be a presence at the front of the net. I'm just kind of good at saving balls or setting balls, that kind of stuff. So I enjoy it though. It's a fun way to get out and get some exercise with some friends.
ND Forever 72 in the YouTube chat asks, do you see a tight game going into the fourth quarter or a comfortable, say, 10-point win? Will Greathouse pick up where he left off in the title game? So 2 questions there. What do you think about the first one, going into the fourth quarter or a comfortable 10-plus point win?
I don't see it necessarily being a tight game. I think Notre Dame's going to be in control. What that looks like, I'm not sure. I don't see it being a tie game or a field goal game going into the fourth quarter. But, a lot of this depends on this defense that Miami has put together through the portal. You know, we just don't know. I don't have high expectations that it's going to be this great, you know, complete turnaround, new defensive coordinator, new portal players in week one, right? Like I can maybe see that throughout the season, but getting everything figured out against a team like Notre Dame, who is at least established in the run. They're bringing back a lot of those wide receivers like Greathouse that ended well at the end of last season. We know CJ Carr has more arm talent than Riley Leonard. So, you know, if Miami's defense is decent and then yeah, maybe this is a close game, but I just really don't see that. So I do see Notre Dame but Notre Dame to me isn't going to be a team where, you know, if they get up, Marcus Freeman's not just going to air the ball out. We know he doesn't want to turn the ball over. So if Notre Dame starts to get into a 10-point, 14-point lead, they're going to start downshifting a little bit, especially late in the game, and allowing their run game to eat up clock, control tempo, that sort of stuff. So I really just don't see this game getting too far out of hand, and it'll stay particularly close if Miami's defense can just be anything better than what they were last season.
The two biggest questions to me are how CJ Carr handles the environment, one, but also handles Miami's defense. Those two things kind of go hand in hand, because if the defense is chewing him up, you know, the environment is going to get even louder, and it can kind of snowball and get out of hand that way, kind of like it did 8 years ago. And, you know, like Miami wants to keep leaning back on, you know, on that to a different coaching staff almost a decade ago, and compare that to, you know, to this year's team, a team that just went to the national championship game and has played in plenty of big environments. So even though CJ Carr didn't play in those environments last year, he was in those environments on the sideline, and a majority of his teammates did play in those environments. So, you know, like in terms of how the team is going to handle that, I don't think it's going to come close to snowballing, you know, close to looking like it did 8 years ago, with a completely different set of circumstances, a completely different head coach and how he prepares the team and everything else. But so I think that, can Miami make CJ Carr make mistakes? Ultimately, I think that is the thing that's really the only thing, again, somewhat coupled with the environment, that would keep this game close. I do think that Notre Dame ends up winning 10-plus points. Now, it could be fairly close going into the fourth quarter. Like, I don't see Miami, independent from, you know, mistakes, turnovers by Notre Dame, I don't see Miami being able to score much more than 17 points in this game. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think if you're, you know, you talked about the environment and CJ Carr kind of getting established, getting his feet wet, getting that composure. Let me ask you a question. Are you willing to go all out that the first play of the game is a handoff to Jeremiah Love? If I'm on the script, my first three plays would be play action, easy completion, run, and then see where we're at.
I would love to see that.
Because they're going to load the box up, play one. Everything's going to be.
Vince thinks that you first have to establish the run before play action.
No, I think you rip it, play action right out of the gate, get a 5-yard completion, and then run 2 straight plays and get the last 5 yards.
Yeah, they know you have Jeremiah Love. You don't have to have already run the ball.
Correct. That's the whole scouting report, is do not let Jeremiah Love get loose.
Right. Exactly.
So they're going to have 6-7 in that box. They're going to play man on the backside. You've got you got Malachi Fields. Just put him on a 2-3 yard in route, put his big body across the middle of the field and let it go. And then pick up the rest of the yards with 2 run plays, get a first down, and then see where we're at. But I love the idea of doing play action early. Just let him get that confidence right off the bat.
I agree. As to the second part of the question, will Greathouse pick up where he left off in the title game? I mean, I don't know if he's going to put up back-to-back 100-yard games. He does have a different quarterback for one thing. But I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be a very productive receiver in Notre Dame's offense this season.
Yeah, he's going to be very productive. I mean, you hope that he picks up where he left off. And certainly that's the anticipation, or not even the anticipation, that's the expectation, because of how well he ended last year in the most important games of the season. And so you've set yourself up now where fans, diehards, I guess, like us, expect you to kind of pick up from that spot and keep going.
It was interesting. I was reading something today. This is completely, off topic a little bit, but I just saw that, I was just reading Bill Walsh's comment about how Miami will try to blindside CJ Carr from Knapp's side. They'll try stunts, and Bain, their defensive end, they're expecting, or at least one of the Miami media people that I saw expects Notre Dame to try to run right at Bain, their best defensive end, similar to how Notre Dame did with Abdul Carter in the semifinals last year. Completely different scenario and set of circumstances, for one thing, because Abdul Carter was obviously injured. That was part of the game plan there. And you also, can negate some of Abdul Carter, a great defensive end, by taking it, right at him in that direction. I don't think that you're necessarily going to do that all the time against a guy like Bain, who doesn't have a shoulder injury like Abdul Carter had.
Yeah, and he's also not a top 5 draft pick
Right.
as well. So, I think last year when we were talking about that, we were talking about kind of how the veer concept would be effective against Penn State. I don't necessarily see that as much against Miami, like you were saying.
Yeah. And Miami's, look, probably the biggest, I think the two bigger questions that Miami has is their receivers on the offensive side of the ball and their linebackers on the defensive side of the ball. Like Notre Dame getting into the second level from a running situation. And when you've got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, that's a pretty hefty mismatch if your linebackers are average and they're not able to pursue and they're not able to get out and cut them off on the edge. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a timeout. Mailbag day on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We'll continue answering more Notre Dame football questions coming up next. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. Tongue-tied. Notre Dame kicks off the season Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern time at Miami. Our game day coverage on Sports Radio WSBT begins at 3 o'clock Eastern time. The game day crew will be on before every Notre Dame football game all season long. Tim Grau, Jim Arizari, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka on for 3.5 hours before the Irish take on the Hurricanes this Sunday night. They'll have special guests, of course, each week, including Tony Rice and Mike Golick Jr. among the guests for this week's show. So it's the all-new, revamped game day show before every Notre Dame game all season long. They'll start at 3 o'clock Eastern on Sports Radio WSBT and all of the digital devices as well. Are you like wound up? Are you ready? Like, are you like through the roof ready for Sunday at this point?
No, this is the calm before the storm for me. I don't really start getting fired up until probably day of the game, to be honest with you. So still calm, especially the first game of the season. I feel like it's a bit tough. Like once we get into the full swing of the season, then it's like, you get into like that schedule, I think, or a routine of the season. But the first one for me is like the calm before the storm. And then when it hits, it hits.
These first 2 weeks are going to be wonky anyway, because you go game, bye week, and then another game week after that. So it's going to be a little bit weird. Salty Virginia Peanuts wants to know how far Notre Dame will go to provide Kenny Minchey with a role in games, and would a certain amount of game time keep him from hitting the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think this is a good question. It sounds like, based off of Marcus Freeman's comments, that he wants both of these guys obviously to be prepared any given moment of any given game, but it doesn't sound like just because CJ Carr is named the starter that Kenny Minchey won't find his way into the offense somehow. Maybe that's, a more mobile kind of package as you get maybe into the goal line, or, game plan specific. But I do think we'll see a little bit of Kenny Minchey. And again, that doesn't mean he's just out there to run the ball. I think he just runs kind of a different style of option or offense, more or less kind of a toned down version of the Riley Leonard offense that we saw last year, and more ability to pass the ball. But I think Minchey, if we're being quite honest, is going to have a tough decision to make at the end of this season. If CJ Carr, absolutely lights it up, and Kenny Minchey doesn't get much time outside of, some spot stuff here or there, some mop-up time here and there, CJ Carr still has a lot of eligibility left, and is obviously younger than Minchey. So, a business decision is a business decision, but I think we have to get through this season first to maybe understand more where Kenny Minchey's head will lie at the end of the season.
There's a long way to go. They haven't even played game one. The short answer to the question is a package for Kenny Minchey is not going to keep him out of the transfer portal. If CJ Carr is the starter all season long and plays well, as of right now, Kenny Minchey still has 3 years of eligibility. You go through this year and you're only going to have 2 years of eligibility remaining, because we're back to 5 years to play 4 now. So I think that Kenny Minchey is involved in the offense, not as some kind of carrot to dangle in front of him to try to keep him out of the transfer portal, but because it makes sense for Notre Dame winning football games. If they think that Kenny Minchey can help them win games in some sort of package that Minchey can be inserted into in whatever situation that is, whether it's goal line or anything else, then they'll get him out there on the field. But if Minchey is just a package guy this year, similar to Tyler Buckner in 2021 when he was a freshman playing behind Jack Cohn, that's not going to keep him out of the portal. At the end of the day, he wants to play, and he wants to have a shot at playing in the NFL as well. And you're not going to get that being a backup guy and a package quarterback. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, agreed.
Played Like a Champion today has a slew of questions from the Champions Lounge for us. Number one, where would you rank Miami compared to the other teams on the schedule from least to most difficult to beat? He says, please note, I'm not asking for an abstract ranking of how good each team is, but how hard it will be for Notre Dame to win which takes into account matchups, location of the game, place on the schedule, etc. I think this game, I'll just go ahead and go first on this one. I think that this game is at least somewhat similar to last year at Texas A&M, because you're going into, like hostile environment and all those different kind of things. You've got similarities with the way the teams are built, physical down at the line of scrimmage. Last year, I like Notre Dame's matchup against Texas A&M's receivers quite a bit. It played out that way. I like Notre Dame's running backs better than Texas A&M. It played out that way. And like both of those instances, Notre Dame's secondary against Miami's wide receivers, I like that. Notre Dame's running backs are better than Miami's. I mean, that's going to be the case with any team on the schedule this year. I like that. The biggest difference in this game compared to last year is last year Notre Dame had the experience at the quarterback position. This year Miami has the experience at the quarterback position. But as we know, there's a ton of upside with CJ Carr. And so, in terms of where I would rank, like how we would put this in terms of I think it's very similar to last year at Texas A&M. The kind of environment and the matchups are very similar to the Texas A&M game last year. I think Miami's got a little bit more talent than Texas A&M, but like Mike Elko inherited a team that was largely intact. It was just him trying to put, his stamp on the team. This year, obviously, 20 transfer portal players coming into Miami. That's the biggest difference. And how quickly can Mario Cristobal make that a cohesive, unit? So I think it's fairly similar. The situation, the difference is Notre Dame's got a ton more experience this year, and they've all been through that Texas A&M environment and a college football playoff environment throughout, December and January last year. What do you think?
I'm trying to find the way to say this best. I feel like I'm understanding what you're saying, but also I feel like while there is similarities last year, starting the season against Texas A&M, just as Notre Dame is starting this season at Miami, there are a lot of similarities. But to me, there's also a lot of dissimilarities. So, Notre Dame came in as the underdog last season. I think that's the main thing that has really switched is I think Notre Dame is expected to win this game. Last year, depending on who you asked, I think a lot of people will have been okay if Notre Dame lost that game, but it was a close one. It was on the road against a ranked team in an SEC environment, I'm more worried, I think, about the Texas A&M game than I am the Miami game at the end of the day, and I'm contemplating whether or not I want to put the USC game above Miami as well. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. It's in that 2-3 range of importance or I guess severity or difficulty to beat. And the main reason I say that is Notre Dame, for what makes it hard to differentiate between Miami and Texas A&M is, yes, Texas A&M is at home, but I think Mike Elko is a better coach. He's got a second-year quarterback. I think that, yes, they lost some talent on defense, but they also have that bitter taste in their mouth of what did happen at home against them last season, right? So now they're trying to bring that to Notre Dame this season at their place. There's just a lot of uncertainties for game one in Miami. Notre Dame has, the only thing that they don't have that Miami has is Carson Beck, an experienced quarterback, a highly rated, highly touted quarterback. And on a lot of people's big board to start last season was the number one quarterback going into college football. Obviously that didn't happen, some injuries. Now he's at Miami, but that's really the only thing that Miami has on Notre Dame playing in that stadium. Notre Dame played in 4 consecutive big environments to end the season last year, one of them being this exact stadium. Marcus Freeman has got them over those mental.
Yeah, but the stadium is a lot different when it's a bowl game setting, even if it's a playoff game, compared to a home environment, right?
Yeah, I understand that, but I think that there are more questions on Miami as a team themselves than there is Texas A&M. Like, we talked about the defense. It is still a whole new offense as well. I mean, Carson Beck is going to be new. You have all new wide receivers. Like, a lot of things are new in Miami, and for everything to come together week one against a program like Notre Dame who has a constant defense. They have a constant wide receiver room. They have some consistency at the running back room and across the offensive line. I just trust that and where Notre Dame is as a program compared to this one-off offensive success that Miami had last season.
All right. Fair enough. So you'd put it third. I still think it is probably at the top just because it's game one and there are a lot of variables that go into this and the fact that it is a road game. Question 2 from Played Like a Champion. Which wide receiver do you think will play away from the slot most often, Will Pauling or Jaden Greathouse? They have both played in the slot a bit. I think it's going to be Pauling. They've tried Greathouse before. Like outside, but he is much more comfortable out of the slot. And that's where he's been most productive, is out of the slot. And I think that Pauling talked a little bit about it during camp when we got to talk to him. And I think that Pauling is going to be the one who plays away from the slot more often at the Z position.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Will Pauling. I think he's a guy who will I think he has just hearing what Marcus Freeman has said about him, he's a captain, hearing some of the other stuff that's been going around. He's just a guy who I think is willing to compete no matter if he's in the slot, the field, the boundary. I think him being out there is good enough for him, and he'll do, whatever it takes to be kind of effective in that position. So, I picked him a few weeks ago to be someone who I think ends up having more production than Faison. I still hold true to that. I still think that, his versatility and his competitive spirit is going to get him a lot of opportunities in the offense this season.
Yep. Scott L. Esquire, who of course has Played Like a Champion, chimes in. He says, fair enough. I think it's the hardest for the record. I agree with you because of the potential for environment. If Notre Dame can go in and strike like lightning and take that crowd out of it, that changes the game right away. It's up to Notre Dame to be able to do that. And, again, limit mistakes. I think that mistakes are the only way that Miami stays in this game. And, like Mario Cristobal talked about the problems that they had in kickoff coverage last year, and they need to be better and all that different kind of stuff. Well, Notre Dame's got Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love back there returning kickoffs right now to start the season. I think that, those two guys can be big time headaches for, playing for a team, playing on a team where special teams is a priority, because that's an aspect that, we don't talk a whole lot about, but I think that is going to be a big factor in this game as well. The kind of field position that Notre Dame limits opposing teams to, and also the kind of field position that they have. And when you've got Price and Love back there, I think that that's going to be a big factor. The field goal game is going to be a factor as well. We got to kind of try to keep things moving here. We're running out of time here in the first hour. Played Like a Champion also wants to know what types of throws and reads CJ Carr is the most comfortable and consistent with right now based on limited information available. Possible answers might be screens, middle short, quick out, deep post, many others didn't list. Look, we all know about the word out of camp about, the turnovers, trying to work it downfield. Based on what our eyes have seen and, some things that we've heard, I think that as long as CJ Carr is not taking chances deep down the middle, I think that that's where he'll stay clean. Like, I think that that's where he has to stay away from. Look at the blue gold game last year with the deep post that he tried to make to Saldata that was intercepted. And then the first day of training camp, both passes that we saw were like intermediate to long down the middle of the field. That seems to be, like where the safety comes into play, coming over to help. I think that that's a little bit of a blind spot for him right now. Anything else, I think that he is locked in on. I think that seems to be where he probably needs to stay away from, deep middle of the field. What do you think?
Yeah, you kind of took it right, the words right out of my mouth. He just needs to avoid the middle of the field where the safety is going to be helping.
Yeah.
Anything that involves kind of layering between coverage right now, I don't think is worth the risk in the first game of the season on the road against an opponent like Miami. I think his wheelhouse is not, and I think this question kind of poses as a lot of like layups, like screen passes, short, middle, quick out, deep post. I mean, those are obviously going to be in there, but like throws that are actually throws that I think are in his wheelhouse is that kind of back shoulder kind of, I wouldn't call it a fade, but as the wide receiver is working towards the sideline or outside the hash, that is kind of his bread and butter right there.
We'll probably come to call it the Malachi Fields throws
Correct.
at some point this season.
And so getting that man coverage and using the sideline as basically, boxing out another defender, because if you're throwing that ball towards the sideline, the safety is not going to get over there as he could in the middle of the field. So
exactly,
using the sideline to your advantage is almost kind of a safety, and getting that ball kind of layered over the back shoulder, dropping it in the bucket, as some might say, is I think where he's going to make a lot of money.
Yes. Along with Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers. Mailbag Day. A lot of great Notre Dame football questions as we gear up for Notre Dame and Miami this week. We'll take our last time out of this hour, and then we are back to wrap up this hour. We've got rapid fire coming up with a tons of good stuff in hour number 2 as well. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Hour number one of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com is winding down. We've got rapid fire coming up in hour number two. A lot of juicy stuff, I think, in rapid fire. We've got a full hour of rapid fire tonight as well. It's one of these weeks where the South Bend Cubs don't play till 7:30, so the pregame starts a little bit later. So that just gives us more room to roam. Back to the mailbag. Submitted in the YouTube chat. Joe Allen asks, do you think Josh Pate gets enjoyment out of being wrong most of the time when he picks against Notre Dame? Yes, the national picks are coming out, and there's a lot of people on the Miami train right now. I think that a lot of these national picks are basically going the way that I said it would coming into the season. They see Carson Beck on one side and an unproven first-time starter on the other side, and they're swaying in the direction. They're buying into some of this Miami hype, like discounting the fact that Notre Dame is the team that has the better roster, did just go to the national championship game. And by the way, they're better coached. Like, does that count for anything in all of this? Mario Cristobal has shown time and again that he will make blunderous mistakes with his decisions from the sideline. Marcus Freeman has not shown that. Marcus Freeman outcoached a national championship winning coach and a coach who has also, not been able to win big games, but he beat 3 top 10 teams along the way to getting to the national championship game last season. Miami, Cristobal doesn't have that on his resume, but that's why a lot of these national guys, I think, are going on the Hurricanes right now with their picks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most logical reason. But again, it's just misguided to think that, because yes, Carson Beck is a good quarterback and will probably have a decent amount of talent around him. But I think what a lot of people forget is really how good this Notre Dame defense was last season, and they have a lot of key pieces returning in the secondary and the linebacker room, and they're getting healthy again on the defensive line. So, you put that together and having, in my opinion, the best running back in the country, I think it easily and quickly negates anything that Miami has on paper. So we'll see, but I take enjoyment of seeing people like Josh Pate be consistently wrong.
But, I mean, Irish Gordian Nod might have the answer here. He says, no, he gets enjoyment out of making money from all the Notre Dame fans clicking on his videos to hate watch him. I think that is a thing as well. That is fair. Tommy Gunn says, as long as Freeman has learned to count to 11, he put a laughing emoji. It's like little truth in every joke. Look, I'm not trying to point fingers. It was 2 years ago. I think we should all be past it by now. But that's literally the position coaches. Like, that's on. Like, I realize, again, like said, like when we were talking about the quarterback decision and, does Marcus Freeman need to defer to his assistants and all these different things? At the end of the day, case in point, it's Marcus Freeman's name that is on the marquee. That's the position coach's responsibility, though, to make sure, like that his guy was out there on the field. The right guys were out there on the field, and it happened not just once, but twice. Tommy says no excuses, but that's literally not the head coach's job to count how many players are out there on the field. Jesse in stunned silence.
Yeah, I have no further comment. I mean, I'm over it 2 years ago.
Yeah. I realized Tommy was joking to some extent, but again, serious as well. I am Tenzin. I am the son of Aang in the YouTube chat. If the linebackers have improved in coverage, whether man or zone, will they get multiple interceptions this season? Yes or no?
I think Notre Dame's overall, his athleticism at the linebacker position will create a lot of turnovers, guys who are naturally just around the ball. If balls kind of become deflected over the middle, if you've got quarterbacks who are trying to sneak in, throws over a linebacker's head, but in front of a safety or a cornerback. But yeah, I think more so in zone, you'll see some of that stuff. But Notre Dame definitely has, like I said, the athleticism to be really effective in coverage in the linebacker position.
I agree as well. Andre wants to know pregame meal before the Miami game. Mine will be whatever is in the press box. I have no idea what that will be Probably hot dogs, maybe mac and cheese or something like that.
That's a good question. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be at the Guardians game earlier that day. So I think some hot dogs and maybe a nachos will be in my future, but
Okay.
I might hold out and get some like wings on the way home for the game.
Salty Virginia Peanuts. What's the over-under on the cost of a beer at Notre Dame Stadium when they start selling beer? I'd put it at $12.50. What do you think? More than that, less than that?
I'm going to put it at $14.
14? Okay. I'll say 12.5 and stick with that. Johnny S3 wants to know if WSBT has an internet access. I know that we were talking about, like game broadcasts and all that stuff earlier, so I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to. There is, like, in terms of like the pregame show type stuff, our radio station, again, like stuff will be on the Sports Radio WSBT app, the WSBT YouTube channel, and that kind of thing. In terms of the games themselves, you can only find like the game broadcast on the Odyssey app. Johnny S3 says for radio. Yes. So you can go to sportsradiowsbt.com. It streams there, and also the Sports Radio WSBT app. You can go to those places. Oh, where did it go? Andre says, prove them wrong. They say Notre Dame recruiting on the uptick, but they still don't give them respect. Talking about the national guys. Joseph wants to know if I watched Kansas State, Iowa State. I watched most of it. I was pretty bored because most of what I saw was a 7-7 game. It was very uninspiring offensive football, and the field was sloppy and all that kind of stuff. I agree about Avery Johnson. Like, I don't think he's an NFL quarterback as well. How much did you get to see, Jess?
Bits and pieces. I fell asleep in the second half because it was boring and I was exhausted after working out in the morning and golfing as well. So if it were exciting, I think I would have, been able to stay awake, but I got a nice nap in after a while.
Yeah. Tommy's mad because he had questions in earlier. You did. I saw the special teams question. He wanted to know like who he thought would be out there on the kickoff coverage team. I mean, specifically, not really sure since we don't get a depth chart for that. I mean, I just think there's basically going to be a lot of – my computer is just doing some weird stuff here. There's going to be a lot of backup, defensive backs, some wide receivers, some linebackers out there on the field, and a handful of starters sprinkled in. Like,
I think Jaden Osbury, Luke Talich, Dallas Golden are names to kind of look at for special teams.
Swandong says he was skipped. I don't remember seeing a question for him. Maybe it came in when that flurry was coming in. I apologize because Jesse can't star, and I have to try to star all the stuff as they come up, so they get saved. I might have missed that. I apologize. All right, that is it for hour number 1 and the mailbag portion of the show. We'll take a time out, and in hour number 2, we've got rapid fire on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We roll in with a full house of faces for radio on the YouTube screen as we start hour number 2 of the show today. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers, Bobby Hensley graces us with his presence today. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Good to see you. What's that hat that you're wearing today?
Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, the AAA affiliate of the Miami Marlins.
All right.
You don't know that?
I guess I didn't.
I didn't know we were going to talk baseball, you know?
He's got his Carolina hat and his
Carolina shirt, Jacksonville hat.
Yeah.
Wow, your eyes are going bad.
I know, right? little powder blue, ready to roll today. All right. Well, it's rapid fire time as we start the second hour of the show. So, former college football coach Rick Neuheisel was on the Dan Patrick Show this week, and the conversation turned to Notre Dame. Here they are.
Dame doesn't have to join a conference now, ever, because all they have to do is go 10-2, and they're going to be in the playoffs because they're a brand.
And can get whether it's home games or can get the bye, right? The seeding thing changed. So Jack Swarbrick goes down as a hero. Not only did he fight for their independence, he also has got them in a chance where they can be part of the field on an annual basis. And they can schedule around it. That will be the interesting thing. Who will schedule Notre Dame, and can they freeze them out to force them into a conference? That remains to be seen.
But, they're playing USC, but that's going away. They're
Right.
not playing Michigan. I mean, they're going to play some ACC, schedule teams, but
That's right.
10-2 seems pretty reasonable every year for Notre Dame.
I would agree. And they've got a nice recruiting machinery. This is a good thing for Notre Dame, but there will be some clamoring back and forth after a few years of this. This is in its infancy, but after a few years, if they don't schedule up, and it'll be interesting as to the Big Ten and the SEC, how much they'll schedule them. You can see both of those conferences involved with the Notre Dame right now.
All right, so a few different things to hit there from Rick Neuheisel with Dan Patrick. And let me start with this, Jesse, because Neuheisel talked about Jack Swarbrick goes down as a hero. So is getting, again, a few different topics that I want to hit here coming out of this, is getting a format to keep Notre Dame included in the college football playoff ultimately Swarbrick's legacy?
I think it's the biggest piece of his legacy. I think getting Notre Dame back on the right track and steadying the ship, with Brian Kelly to start and having kind of that continued success that they had, and not, regular season success, not necessarily winning the big game. But yes, I think obviously the biggest thing that he'll be known for as he was passing the torch is the way that he left, or the condition that he left Notre Dame in. It was better than when he started. And it started with Brian Kelly and establishing kind of that consistent success. And now the torch was passed to Marcus Freeman to kind of take them to that next level in terms of recruiting, winning big games on the national level, and now having a continuous path or seat in the college football playoffs. So him guaranteeing that, or at least establishing a path year in and year out for Notre Dame, has to be his greatest achievement.
Mm-hmm. I came in here not thinking that you would say that, and I was ready to argue about it because I think you're exactly correct. I was going to say it's sustained excellence, because I think in the 2000s they ebbed and flowed a little bit. They had a couple good runs, but nothing ever great. And then the playoffs started, or the BCS started, and the way that he made them a destination again, he brought Notre Dame back to their consistent prominence that they had before. Might have saved the NBC contract if they had tail spun a little bit more down, and then they would have had to join a conference to make the playoffs. So I think when you look at what could have happened and what he didn't let happen, and bringing in the winningest coach in the history of the program, which I know it ended sour, but I think that you're right about that. I think that the fact he gave them a path, an avenue to stay independent, make their money, keep their contracts, that has to be what his legacy is going to be.
Yeah, I think all of the above. I mean, you guys have both hit it, but it started with the fact that he did hire Brian Kelly and brought stability back to the program. That was the first thing. But then also had, the foresight to see this young, inexperienced guy in Marcus Freeman who is such a people person, opposite of Brian Kelly, and like dynamic and was willing to ride out some of the short-term waves with a young, inexperienced coach. And then year 3, you ride it all the way to a national championship game. But keeping Notre Dame, like he and Sankey were pretty much in step when they were going through these meetings a few years back. And, I was one of the people who was like, what, when this proposal came out, it's like, you're never going to be able to have a first round playoff bye. Well, look, year 1 of the expanded format, and already that's gone by the wayside, but he had played a big part. So I think all those things together are it.
He's going to be the only athletic director to be on a Netflix documentary as well. I mean, he had to overcome, but he was the one at the head of a lot of weird stuff during his time at Notre Dame. So the fact that he kept them relevant, kept them going, and kept them above board, I think that's what his legacy is going to be. Because the Teo thing, there was other things that I'm not going to, we all know what happened at Notre Dame during his time, but the fact that he just kept them going, and I think that's incredible. And a lot of credit might go to Brian Kelly for that in that time period. But Swarbrick was the one that had his back, and he's the one that kept it going.
Yep. Stymie says saving college football during COVID was a pretty big deal, too. I would agree with that. But again, I think that's as big a deal as it was at the time. I think that's going to fall a little bit farther down the line, especially just because of everything that has come about since, Jack Swarbrick's tenure began and to where, where the Notre Dame football program was. That was his biggest accomplishment, was hiring the person to bring stability back to the program. So the part about scheduling, scale of 1 to 10, between the conference realignment and now the conference is going to the 9-game schedules, how concerned should Notre Dame be about being frozen out and not being able to schedule Power 4 opponents going forward?
I think this kind of comes down to Notre Dame's schedule formula. We know that there's going to be a big chunk of ACC teams who are always going to be Power 4, and you hope that Clemson kind of, gets on maybe that constant rotation of, home 1 year, away 1 year, home year, 1 year, away 1 year. And then you're going to have your schools like Navy, Army, Stanford, those sort of games. And then, you have those remaining kind of maybe 2, 3, 4 games. And we know the SEC just basically incentivized, playing tougher out of conference games after, going to the nine schedule format that includes conference games. So I don't think that this is really going to hurt Notre Dame. And I don't think that teams are going to see this as an opportunity to freeze Notre Dame out at the end of the day. I think it makes for marquee matchups that are going to, provide quality football, but also provide a lot of, at the end of the day, ratings on TV and money. So that's what it really comes down to, in my opinion. So, the hardest part about this is what Notre Dame does, I think, to replace USC. And if it can become something like Clemson, a consistent maybe rivalry that grows, and then you're doing your usual, ACC games, then adding a couple, out of conference SEC Big Ten games, I think it'll naturally take care of itself. So a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at like a 2. I'm really not worried about this at all.
I think that, like you say, it goes back to Notre Dame's branding. They're worth a lot of money. And so everybody wants that matchup. And as long as they have that appeal, I don't think they need to worry about anything. That right now, the way everything is set up, you said a 2. I'm going to say even a 1. I don't think that's a problem because everybody's going to want that Notre Dame money, that matchup, those tickets, that national TV coverage, whether it's home or away. And they're going to be able to trade games around. And I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually have caveats and conference contracts that maybe Notre Dame as an independent could still maybe get, a game that doesn't count against or does count for a conference game just to keep them relevant. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I think the way that Notre Dame has positioned themselves I don't see why it wouldn't be something because everybody wants to play them. Every conference wants them. So then I think that why wouldn't they allow their teams to play them and have a benefit to it? And that helps the ratings. That helps college football. There's a lot of money that'll go through. So I kind of agree with what you're saying. I don't think it's an issue at all, but it'll be interesting to see. But as long as they have a path to the playoff, they don't need to join a conference. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's a legitimate question to ask if Notre Dame does get frozen out, because I think that, like, when you look at where the Big Ten is right now and the way the Big Ten is playing things, it feels like if it's going to happen, it's going to be more from them than anybody else, because like USC has already used it as an excuse to potentially get out of playing Notre Dame going forward. Like when the SEC finally announced, hey, we are going to go to this 9-game schedule, all the reporting was the SEC still has this stipulation that, like, okay, you're going to play 9 games, but you also have to schedule at least 1 game against another out-of-conference Power 4 team. And so that keeps Notre Dame in the mix with a lot of teams in the SEC potentially, and they've got future series locked up with SEC teams. They, like, with the exception of Purdue, they've got a lot fewer future, obviously Michigan State is coming on and Michigan will be on in a few years, but like you'd like to see Michigan on there more frequently, I think. But the Big Ten with their 9-game schedule doesn't have that same stipulation where they're telling teams, hey, you've still got to go out and schedule somebody, like look at Penn State as an example. I know we've got the Penn State guy in here, but like, he admitted fully in the chat that Penn State doesn't have a tough out of conference. Like that's going to be the question. Does the Big Ten up its ante and say, okay, we're going to play this, we're playing this 9-game conference schedule, but you've also actually got to go out and challenge yourself at least a little bit and play somebody. But another factor is like Notre Dame hasn't traditionally played many of these Big 12 schools. And with an expanded Big 12 where you've got teams like Colorado and Utah and the Arizona schools and, like a little bit different footprint, but like, does Notre Dame maybe explore that avenue a little bit if things did get a little bit more difficult trying to schedule some teams out of conference? Because I think that there are a lot of potential options out there, and to the point that both of you guys made, it could be very lucrative for some of these other schools as well when to get Notre Dame coming in, whether it's Boulder or, even like playing it, in Denver, in an NFL stadium or something like that, or down, in Arizona against Arizona is a school that Notre Dame hasn't played. They've played Arizona State more recently, but I think that there are a lot of options out there. I mean, look, between the ACC arrangement and Navy, that's half your schedule right there to begin with. It's just a matter of figuring out who the other 6 are going to be most years.
But I think if they wanted to lock Notre Dame out of the playoff or try to make them join a conference, they would have done it by now. There's a reason why, with all this realignment and these new era of college football, there's a reason why they haven't. Notre Dame, whether you like them or not, they're an attraction. Everybody wants to play them. Everybody wants to beat them or see them win.
But again,
an attraction.
They like that for now, but things are changing every year. So I mean, right. that's what kind of that unknown, like how conferences and schools are going to continue to look at it. Whether it's just a bottom line or whether it's, well, does it help us get to the playoff now? I think DJ made the point, though, as well. There is so much TV influence in all of this stuff. Fox could easily put their finger on the scale and say, hey, Big Ten,
stop scheduling them.
No, we'd like you to keep scheduling them because we'd like Notre Dame on our air more often. So, okay, so final point. If they don't schedule up, was something that you heard Dan Patrick and Neuheisel say. There's this less than subtle implication that Notre Dame's schedule isn't tough enough. So what do you guys say to that?
Yeah, I couldn't wait for this one. I've been gearing up for this answer, I think, all day. I am so just done with this narrative or notion that Notre Dame doesn't play a hard schedule just because they're not in a conference. Just say it. They don't play in a conference championship, and that's what tips the scale for you at the end of the year is they're not playing that last data point that these conferences need to make money and put out there on a TV and play on a neutral site and those sort of things. I mean, let's get down to the nitty gritty. In 2027, Notre Dame has SMU, Wisconsin, Michigan State, USC, Florida State, and Miami on the schedule. That's a pretty known schedule right there. 2028, as of now, the big opponents, Michigan State, Clemson. 2029, you have Texas, Clemson, Arkansas, Miami. 2030, you have Bama, Clemson, Florida State, Texas. Like, what are we talking about at this point? These are all freaking playoff teams or teams that are in national championship contention right now. You can't control when these schedules are made. It's your job as a school to put big names on the schedule. You can't control what Florida State, what Miami, what USC, what the state of their program is going to be in 3 or 4 years from now. But they even have Texas. They even have Clemson. They have, Alabama, teams that we know have established success the last 10, 20 years. So it's just ridiculous. Like this, every year Notre Dame finishes in at least the top 20 in schedule difficulty because year in and year out, majority of their opponents are Power 4 and occasionally like Navy or Rice or USF, but that's like 1 or 2 games on the schedule. So my rant's over, but I hate that so much.
I like it.
Bobby, I'll let you answer here in a minute, but to your point,
good.
like just because you're in a conference doesn't mean that that you're playing this great schedule. Like we've said this before, and said it a lot about the Big Ten, dispelling the notion that just because like the Big Ten is overbloated means they're playing this greatly difficult schedule. Here's Penn State's schedule for those who haven't heard me run through it before. Nevada, Florida International, Villanova, Oregon, UCLA, Northwestern, Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers. Here's Miami's schedule. Of course, a full-fledged member of the ACC. This is from last year. Florida A&M, Ball State, South Florida, Virginia Tech, Cal, Louisville, Florida State, Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse. Is that any more difficult, either one of those, than anything Notre Dame puts together year in and year out? Here's Ohio State's schedule. Texas, okay, we know that's a good team. Grambling, Ohio, Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, Michigan. I mean, basically, Ohio State's schedule is very comparable to Notre Dame's. You have, like
tiers.
You have a tier of 3 teams that should be fairly challenging. You have a middle tier and you have a lower tier. Penn State's is just basically a middle and a lower tier for the most. I mean, they have 2 teams, obviously that they'll play on there because they play Ohio State and they play Oregon. Indiana, like maybe you could put that in that tier. We'll see. But it's just, Bobby, I'll go ahead and let you answer because that's basically my answer right there.
No, you took a lot of what I was going to say. I agree with both of you guys. So I don't have a whole lot to add, but it's been frustrating for years because the burden of scheduling, yes, it's on Notre Dame, but they aren't dropping the ball with it. There's no way you can look at their schedule and say, oh, these games are pushovers. And on like last year, they lost a bad game because maybe they had a letdown because they had a trap game, but all their big games, they were able to win. It's not their fault if a team's good or bad. Like last year, Florida State was supposed to be a top 5 team preseason. So every single team that played them, they get dinged for playing a team that won like 3 or 4 games. I don't understand why everyone has to attack a schedule. They consistently schedule the great brands. They try to put a tough schedule out. Jesse ran through all of the future opponents, and I don't know how you can look at that and say like, well, yeah. And then a little bit is a burden that it's not Notre Dame's problem on the conference to allow their teams to get better maybe or schedule outside of their own selves because there's so much bottom dragging down of these conferences. And that includes the SEC, that includes the Big Ten, that includes the ACC, the Big 12. And then you look at an opponent like SMU, who everybody's like, oh, SMU, they're actually what they ended up doing last year. They were pretty good. They ended up so I don't like when people attack a schedule against Notre Dame preseason like this because all you can do is play the teams that you have scheduled, and they purposely with their partnership in the ACC, they're not dumb. They schedule the games that they think are the elite programs, the tough programs on a rotation, but Notre Dame's got to win those. And then, yeah, if they do win them, they will make the playoff. But it's not like they're scheduling snowballs that mean nothing. They're actually playing teams tougher than cupcakes.
It's fair if you want to nitpick Notre Dame's schedule last year because they played 2 MAC teams and they played 2 service academies. Even though, like I would challenge any other Power 4 team to go out and play 2 service academies, especially in a year when they're both ranked, and played as well. Army's offensive line won the Joe Moore Award last year. It didn't look very good against Notre Dame. It also skews, like I always have fun with the like the stats are for losers, but it like playing two service academies skews the rushing numbers, like in terms of Notre Dame's rush defense and how that looks when you're playing two teams that make their whole offense around running the football the way the two academies do. But again, last year was a one-off in part because of Miami backing out of playing Notre Dame last year because they overscheduled to have Florida A&M on their home schedule. That was part of how you ended up with a second service academy. And, sometimes when you're trying to put these schedules together as far in advance as they do, like it just doesn't work out. You also end up with a couple of MAC teams. Like there's no doubt, like last year was the most unattractive Notre Dame football schedule that I can remember, especially from a home standpoint. And, like Florida State, look at what Florida State was last year after what they were the year before, to the point you guys have made. Nobody could have predicted that. All right, we'll take a timeout. Jesse, I'll let you make 1 point before we take the break.
All right, I'll be quick. I don't want to belabor it, but like to me, the number one thing that stands out is Notre Dame doesn't get the luxury of the bottom tier teams of these conferences that some of these conference teams get to rotate through their schedule. Notre Dame, when they're playing teams from the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, it is always middle tier and up. It's not like Notre Dame just gets to mop up the floor with the bottom feeder teams of some of these conferences. They're playing, at worst, Virginia Tech. That's a middle tier ACC team. Arkansas, still considered a middle tier team in a down year. It's like they don't even get the luxury of playing the crappy teams that a lot of these conferences get.
Gordian Knot makes a good point with Purdue.
But Purdue.
When these games were scheduled, Purdue hadn't fallen quite as far as they are.
Brom
right
still
now.
had him on the upward trajectory.
Yeah, remember Jeff Brom was the head coach for a little bit. Yes.
I guess I'm saying majority of the time, right? Like here and there, you get a Purdue that slips through the cracks, but most of the time, like on
and it's
paper,
also an in-state traditional rival, So like a lot of people wanted to see that game back on the schedule to some extent. They got it, and it'll be on there for a while. And again, at the very least, it's a Power 4 team.
You can't schedule the top 10 teams in the nation every year,
every week, and that's is that the expectation now? Like, is that Notre Dame?
If you're Notre Dame, it is
blocking a schedule unless you just have nothing but top 25 opponents because you're not in a conference.
Are you going to play a TV schedule or a schedule that keeps you competitive, and while keeping it as balanced as possible to compete for national championships? Because, like they said, 10-2. Gets you in, and but again, it was a pejorative the way they were saying it because again, like compare Notre Dame's schedule to Penn State, Ohio State, any of these teams in the Big Ten. Notre Dame's schedule is completely comparable to any of these Big Ten teams that the Big Ten wants to throw out there. People who want to argue that Notre Dame needs to be in a conference. Notre Dame's schedule year in and year out is going to be tougher than your run-of-the-mill average Big Ten schedule, unless you're Purdue. Because as we've also pointed out, Purdue for the last 2 years has probably played the toughest schedule of anyone in the Big Ten. They get fed to the Wolves.
Well, they get fed to the Wolves because they're giving everybody else wins, which is a whole different issue. But I don't mean to belabor the points either. I understand. But as long as Notre Dame has enough opponents that are top tier, that makes up for them not having that data point that Jesse brought up in the conference championship game. Because that week they're not playing someone. As long as they keep enough opponents that are high enough ranked, they shouldn't have a problem, and that shouldn't be a complaint.
Timeout, and then back with more rapid fire coming up next. Let's continue. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire with Jesse Stiers and Bobby Hensley. I'm Sean Stiers. No more breaks until we wrap the show. So, like, that's the good thing.
So we got 20 interrupted minutes.
20 interrupted minutes or
uninterrupted?
Depends what you want to do. If you
Depends
want to interrupt, you can.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Depends on who cuts who off. Fill in the blank. The Miami Hurricanes official Twitter X account trolling Notre Dame this week by saying luck ran out the last time the Irish rolled into Hard Rock Stadium is blank.
To me, it's all in good fun. You know, I know a lot of people are kind of, wound up about when Notre Dame, played in different circumstances, and technically they just won a playoff game in that stadium. It's this is a rivalry at the end of the day. And I think a rivalry that, both sides wouldn't mind flaring up and getting some of the dramatics out of it. So, there's always some trolling going on, especially in the big games, first game of the season. Technically, we don't know what either team is going to be, right? So, my opinion, it's even more justified to talk your crap because you're not an 0-4 hole or a 3-0 hole. So, it is what it is. It's and maybe that's just me as a person. I like to talk a little bit of crap. I like to
not
do
you.
that
Not
sort
you.
of stuff. So
Especially you and Vince. Like
and after the game, that's when it's even sweeter. You kind of can come back to it and make fun of their poor takes, but it's just all fun and games. It's part of a big game, a big rivalry, and everything that's about to come on opening football weekend.
Jesse, if you're on Notre Dame's team and you see that post, does it do anything to you as a player? Would it make
not with Marcus Freeman as head coach?
That's kind of what I'm getting. Like, I was thinking you'd say, I know it's fun, and it's I think it's a weird look because, well, Notre Dame played in a game in that stadium more recently than Miami because of how far they made it. So I think that wasn't luck.
Won a big game. Won a bigger game than Miami has probably ever won in that particular stadium.
So that's why I think it's a weird look. But like, as in terms of this particular matchup coming up this weekend, finally this weekend, we're all excited. But I don't think it really matters that much. I don't think it's locker board. I don't think anybody's going to play harder. I don't think anybody should be offended. It's funny. It's good for clicks. It might be a good story for the broadcast to open up with, or they can mention it. So you got little subplots there, but I don't think it really matters in terms of, oh, that's going to really fire them up, or that's really disrespectful. I think they're acknowledging that Notre Dame played there. Their luck. I don't think it was luck. I think, it's not luck to make it that far, but I think it's kind of funny that they posted it. But it's just a weird take when you haven't won a game that's big.
Poking the bear, like, seems kind of odd at this point, considering Miami has done nothing for more than 2 decades, and Notre Dame just played in a national championship game, and again won a semifinal game in your stadium, a more significant win in your stadium than you as a program have. And like, just the fact that they keep going back to 2017, like, that matters, just seems odd to me. Completely different coaching staff. Literally, like, if you're 18 years old right now, you were 10 years old when that game was played. Like, one has nothing to do with the other. And the fact, like, that's what they keep going back to seems very odd to me as well.
It's almost like when you're but it's almost like when you're clinging onto an ex. It's like, you had that one good time, and now we're going to keep bringing it up and trolling and posting about, like, just let it go. It was a long time ago. I don't think Miami's been that relevant in a long time. So I don't understand why I just don't. It's just a weird look. I'm like, where did this even come from?
I will say, though, speaking of the social media aspect of things, I can't wait for Notre Dame's social media team. I always, you were talking about when does it kind of set in of, Notre Dame playing. Honestly, for me, it's when the Notre Dame social media team releases that hype video, usually, the day before games or 2 days before games. Those are when I'm like officially like, all right, I'm ready for this game. I'm ready for this season. So I'm excited about that. I love Notre Dame's social media team.
That's how you can tell it's week 1. You're excited about the social media team putting out a hype video before the game. That's week 1 stuff, right? Because like every other week, you just see it and you're excited. Now you're actually counting down to that before you even get to the weekend.
But the social media, I mean, that's a good call with the social media. Like, like Notre Dame social media to like get them hyped, good content that they release. But the other side of that is what comes after the game.
Yeah.
Like that's where Notre Dame, like they save, whatever, little jabs or shade until after the game. They're not throwing it before the game, like remember the whole build up to enter Sandman and Virginia Tech and all that kind of stuff a few years ago. After Notre Dame went there and won, wasn't it like exit Sandman or something like that the social media team posted? Yes. Like wait and let your play actually do the talking and, let that be the shade and then have some fun with it after the fact on social media. Again, I just think it's very strange that you would poke the bear and set yourself up for what could potentially happen Sunday night if you're Miami. And as Irish Gordian Nutt says, especially since they did duck out playing Notre Dame at Notre Dame last year. And I still say if last year's game had been a Miami home game instead of a Notre Dame home game with the overscheduling thing, there's no way that they're canceling Notre Dame if that's a Miami home game last year. There's no way that Notre Dame is getting booted for Florida A&M.
No, I think it's weird. We don't have to get into that all the way down the path, but
sure we can.
The fact they ducked that has to be brought up more. That needs to be part of the motivation for the game, part of the lead up, because they should have played last year. And then to troll something that Notre Dame did great at the end of the year, combining the two topics kind of, I just don't understand what the Miami social team, it's almost like it's a new intern that doesn't know the history. They don't know what happened last year. Because that's ridiculous that they would even duck him like that. But they did duck him.
By the way, we were talking yesterday. Vince and I decided for CJ Carr, we need to track CJ's wow plays and, chart like how many wow plays he has per game. And we're trying to decide what like the opposite should be, what the bad plays should be. And Bobby O'Shea is just chiming in saying, as to the conversation yesterday, it's the Owen Wilson, wow, versus the Joey Lawrence, whoa. You remember Joey Lawrence? Do you remember Joey Lawrence, Jesse?
No.
Oof. You're just a child.
Too young for that.
Yeah. That's actually a pretty good comparison, though.
Wayne on Twitter tweeted at me, the wows and the bows, because the kid's going to be a dog. So you've got the wows and the bows as an option there. That's not bad either.
I'm more of a Joey Lawrence. I mean, maybe I'm showing my age.
Whoa.
I'm in the middle here of the two of you. So, but I think whoa, because you say that all the time. If there's a bad throw, you're like, whoa, what do you do? So it makes sense.
Exactly.
I like that one.
Exactly. I want to do this question today because kind of playing to what you're talking about, Bobby, we've got some age variation between us. So we've got like me, in my 40s, Bobby in his 30s. Jesse
You're so old,
20s.
you forgot already.
Yeah, that's right. So Lee Corso, of course, will do his last college game day this weekend on the verge of retirement. So with that in mind, who would be on your Mount Rushmore of college football media personalities? And of course, would Lee Corso be in there?
Bobby, I'll let you go first. I struggle more so with these. So I have a good list, but I want to kind of let you dip your toes in the water first.
See, this one's tough for me because I think Lee Corso does make it without a doubt because whether I don't like the headgear stuff. I think it's fun, but like I'm not going to tune in for 3 hours to watch it, especially what it's turned into. I think I can watch the last little clip. Plus, I remember him doing I remember the game day as a whole doing the first road episode at Notre Dame in the Joyce Center.
1993.
Yeah, for the Florida State game.
When you were a toddler.
Yeah, when you were in your 40s the first time.
Yeah, that's right.
So, no, I would put him on there. I'd put Chris Fowler up there because he was the voice of game day for me growing up. So I have Corso and Fowler. And then it really doves. I honestly like the pairing of Matt Leinart and Brady Quinn right now. I think they're great. I know.
Wow. I thought you might actually bring some good perspective to this question.
Not really.
You have gone off the rails very fast here.
Well, I just think that the sports media, in terms of the pregame and the shows and stuff like that. I think it's at
But Mount Rushmore,
a peak right
greatest of all time. The 4 college football media personalities is what we're looking for of all time. No disrespect to Brady Quinn, because I think he's really good. Matt Leinart is okay, but I don't think I'd put him on Mount Rushmore.
You know, it's getting close to putting Nick Saban up there. He's so good on game day. I think he's one of the best they've had on. He gives good insight. He has good personality. The one name I'm not going to say is Kirk Herbstreit. He does not deserve to be on there.
Okay, I didn't ask you to.
No, I know, but that one bugs me. And then the other one, I can get rid of Leinart and I'd put up Pat McAfee because I think he brings such great energy. But then I just look like I'm only putting up the people that are on right now for game day.
Jesse, do you have a good answer to this question?
I'll put Lee Corso.
An answer to this question.
I'll put Lee Corso on my list. Does someone like Gus Johnson get me on the list?
Sure.
Okay.
I would put Gus Johnson on the list over
No
most of the people he just rattled off.
I put Gus Johnson on my list. I put Lee Corso on my list. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said Kirk Herbstreit, to be honest with you. I thought Kirk Herbstreit was really good until about 5 years ago.
Things he said.
Yeah, and I was like, like Desmond Howard's definitely not on my list.
No,
Brady Quinn,
absolutely not.
I think I like Pat McAfee, but it's too early to put him on my Mount Rushmore. I think that's where there's a lot of difficulty. I think that Brent Musburger is probably on my list at some point in there.
All right. You're trending down the right road now.
You're going to say Nestler, aren't you?
Let me just put everybody out of their misery and answer this question.
Give us the answers to the
answer
exam.
this question for you. Keith Jackson to
Whoa,
begin
Nelly.
with. Whoa, Nelly. Robert L. in the YouTube chat. Keith Jackson, arguably the best college football play-by-play announcer of all time. Bobby and I, we're how many years? You're still in your 30s, right? You're not 40 yet, are you?
Not for a month. Hanging on.
All right. So you got some time.
Hanging on.
You're hanging in there.
Yeah.
Even with the age difference that Bobby and I have, we both essentially grew up with Keith Jackson as the main voice of college football. So I put him at the top. Brent Musburger took over that mantle after Keith Jackson was gone. So I would put him next to him. I would put Lee Corso for 3+ decades of being what he's been on College Game Day, whether you like the, putting on the mascot heads and, whatever else or not. I happen to like it. I think the fourth one is much harder to me. Like you guys have both brought up much more recent guys, but I'm going to go with another guy from the Wayback Machine, and I'm going to go with Beano Cook. Like Beano was kind of in a different way Corso before Corso. He was like that older sage who's like into college football, and he was one of the faces that ESPN put out there. It was like one of the talking heads of college football. So I put Beano Cook, him and his Ron Paulus is going to win 8,000 Heisman trophies. That's who I would put on my Mount Rushmore.
See, I don't think of Beano Cook as a Lee Corso. I almost think of him as a Paul Feinbaum,
who was a little bit
stuck
more
in his ways.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what was happening on the field. He was going to pick the same teams no matter what.
Yeah, that's true. Kind of clinging to the tradition of what he grew up with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. And Paul Feinbaum, I think it's interesting. He doesn't even come up, and he makes a lot of money off of just
Nor should he.
But so you think Pat McAfee is too new, not enough, he has too much energy, he just overshadows it, or why isn't Pat McAfee on your list, Sean?
Well, he's done it for 3 years or something like that, and I don't think he's even he's just nowhere close in terms of college football.
So, and then nobody thinks Herbstreit, right, Jesse? Right, Sean? We're not.
I think there's a case for Herbstreit. It's probably a matter, of taste. Herbstreit
used to be good. That's the thing, and I think he's become, in my opinion, he's let his biases and personal opinions affect subconsciously, whether he wants to admit it or not, his analysis. In my opinion,
I don't watch. I don't watch Game Day for Pat McAfee's takes on college football. He's an entertainment.
Yeah, he's an entertainer.
Is what he is. Yeah. So he's nowhere close to being.
He keeps the show moving. Right, he kind of bounces.
He was essentially brought in, because Corso has said all along, it's an entertainment business and football is our vessel. And that's why they brought in Pat McAfee, because obviously, Corso was getting longer in the tooth. They brought in McAfee for entertainment value, and that's the role that he's taken on that show. But I don't watch him for his takes on college football.
But at the end of that show, the only take that anybody cares about is Corso's. Nobody actually remembers what McAfee's pick was or what Saban picked or restate. Like, nobody cares about what they picked. It's only Corso that stands out with the headgear. So I think at the end, even doing the picks, it's more about the celebrity picks and Corso's headgear than it is any of their picks or their takes. At least they can give some insight, because McAfee did play football. He was a punter, so I guess that's still football, right?
Look, there's no case for Pat
out there somewhere.
Can we quit talking about him?
There is no case.
No, I'm not even saying he's on there yet. Just to be clear, I'm just saying at least he played football.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we've spent the off season doing over-under win totals for different teams on FanDuel. We're running out of time with the season fast approaching. I mean, the season has basically begun with week 0 last week, but we've got a lot of teams playing their first games this weekend. We're going to do another one today. The team is going to be Ole Miss. So we're going to go through their schedule, and then we're going to go to the FanDuel app, and we're going to guess what Ole Miss's over-under is for the season. So we're going to start with Georgia State. Then they go to Kentucky, Arkansas. I forgot Jesse likes to yell out wins and losses. Vince just likes to go through the schedule.
Yeah. I've shifted my strategy though. Remember, I count the maybes from now on.
Okay, so let's start over again. Georgia State. What is that?
There's a motorcycle ripping down.
You have a motorcycle in your living room, or it sounded like a sick motorcycle?
His Uber Eats just arrived.
At Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane, LSU, Washington State, at Georgia, at Oklahoma, South Carolina. That's a tough stretch right there. The Citadel, Florida, at Mississippi State. What is Ole Miss's over-under this season? Who wants to take the first shot at it?
8.5.
Dang.
That's barking it out.
That's exactly what I was going to pick. I count, I think 9, then take it down 1 maybe. So I was going to say 7.5.
I think 7.5 is more or less going to be at like minus 180, and I think 8.5 is going to be like minus 110, approaching plus 100 territory.
So I can see that. I think 8.5. That's aggressive. So maybe it is a plus 110.
I think 8.5 is a solid number. What I'm trying to
plus
decide,
odds, though, isn't it?
What
right
I'm
there
trying to decide is it going to be 7.5 with that schedule? You start off with 5 ranked teams on the schedule.
If they win all of those games, they should be in the playoff, huh?
Well, yeah. If they win those games, they will.
I'm joking.
I think Tulane is also a sneaky game in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is they're in. If you look at it on paper, they should be in better shape. Oklahoma, they should be in better shape than South Carolina. They should be in better shape than Florida. I think LSU and Georgia, really, they're 2 juggernauts, but they realistically should handle the rest of those games. So that puts you at 10-2, and then you have a mishap maybe here or there that's 9-3. That's kind of how I come to 8.5. Yes, Oklahoma and Florida look big on paper, but Lane Kiffin's been doing it at Ole Miss for some years now. So I think there's an expectation that he should win. I mean, he should win. I think that, like, outside perspective, like, again, they're just their program is in a better state over the last 5 to 10 years than what Oklahoma.
Okay, we need to hurry up.
Then look up the answer. 8.5 is I'm locking it.
I'm going 7.5.
I'll say 7.5. They're always high ranked, and then they always lose a few stupid games.
It's 8.5. We talked way longer than I thought that we were going to, so we've got to lock it down and get out of here right now. Guys, fun as always. Jesse Stiers, Bobby Hensley. I'm Sean Stiers. Great action as always in the chat. Again, the answer was 8.5. That is the FanDuel over under for Ole Miss. South Bend Cubs baseball coming up here in just a little bit. We will talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.